Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jack the Lad podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, then please do. On today's episode, we've got on Nayyar. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Anyways, I am Nayyar. I am 17 years old, and I can play around 117 different instruments from around the world.
So, this obviously caught my eye hugely while I was, flicking through my phone.
Mm-hmm.
How did it all start?
Well, the story all started when I was in the mother's womb. My dad, he was at the library looking for a book, and he just chose one book randomly and just started reading it. And after reading the book, he read one line which caught his attention. It mentioned, if you play Mozart's music on the womb, then the child will become a musician. So my dad tried that experiment by placing a tiny speaker on top of the mother's womb, which was playing Mozart's music. And when I was around 2 years old, my parents bought me a mini drum set from Toys R Us. And my dad, he set up the mini drum set in front of me and handed me the sticks. He said, play the drums. And I was holding the sticks in my hand. I was thinking, like, what should I do? Should I hit it or should I throw it? I didn't know what to do. And as I grew older and when I was around 6 years old, my parents, they took me to a free drum class in a music school. And after one drum lesson, I was playing the drums like an old pro. I was like, how did this happen? My parents, my drum teacher were shocked. And after that, my parents decided to give me another instrument, which was the guitar. And after learning the guitar, I felt like I had that inspiration to continue to learn more and more instruments. And after the guitar, I went to the piano, to the flute, to the saxophone, on and on and on. And at the age of 11, I had around 20 instruments. And at that time, I was like, maybe I should make a record out of this or something like that. So I did a lot of research to find out, who plays the multiple instruments. And I found this one guy, I think at the age of 23, he can play around 17 or 18 instruments. Then I said, okay, how about I can make a record for playing more instruments than him? So after that, I made my very first world record for playing 44 musical instruments at the age of 12 in 2017. That was my very, very first world record. And after that, I broke my own world record for playing 107 instruments from around the world at the age of 13 in 2019. And currently, I can play around 117 different instruments from around the world at the age of 17. So, yep, that's the whole story.
So, in there then, when you say you can play 117 instruments, is that what standard can you play them at, and does that differ between instruments?
Well, it depends because the instruments I play are advanced level, and there are some instruments which are intermediate and which I am, which I'm trying to improve on my on my playing. And as I mentioned that there are a lot of instruments which I'm trying to fix on my technique and also practicing. And there are some instruments which are very hard to play. And I think the hardest instrument, which took me like around 1 month to learn, was behind me is called the theremin. And the theremin uh, is an electric instrument. So it's kind of like you are playing the instrument in the air. So let me explain how this works. So on the left side, on the theremin, we have two antennas. So the left side would be used for controlling the volume of the sound, and the right antenna would be used for controlling the pitch. Now, now I mentioned the easy part. Now, here comes the hard part. The hard part is that you have to stay still as a statue when playing the theremin. Because if you move your hips or your head or any body part, then the pitch changes. And then you have to retune the instrument and then start from scratch. So that's the hardest part in the theremin.
And which that's well done, bravo. So when you started, obviously you started with the drums and like you said, the saxophone and stuff, and what I would class as traditional Western instruments.
Mm-hmm.
When did it start getting out there? Because I understand that you can play. Is it the African drums?
No, I mentioned the drum set. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, but when did it start going sort of worldwide? Like when did you start playing, stuff from different countries?
I think it started going worldwide when I think when I was at the I think it was the I think it was the trumpet. After learning the saxophone, I went to the trumpet, and then I went to different flutes. And I think the first worldwide instrument, I don't remember, but I think I remember that I think it was the sitar. And the sitar, which is right here, you can see behind me, the red one. So the sitar is a stringed instrument from India. And that instrument has around 11 sympathetic strings, and it has two melody strings. And now you might be questioning that, is the sitar similar to the guitar? Well, to be exact, it is similar. The only difference is that in our guitar, we have 6 strings and we have a fretboard. But in the sitar, we only have 2 melody strings and we have frets, which are not straight as the guitar, but they are rounded. And also another fact about the sitar is that in a guitar, we cannot move the frets. But in the sitar, we can move the frets, which is very, very interesting. And yeah, and also another difference is that on a guitar, we can just play the scale up and down. But on the guitar, we have to play like this, like going all the way down and then all the way up. That's the hardest part when playing the guitar. So, and that takes a lot of practice, to maintain that thing. And also we have different picks. And the one I have is called a Miserable. And for those who are listening to this podcast, the Miserable is kind of like a guitar pick, except it's a bit triangular, So that's the only difference, I would say, from the sitar and the guitar.
Which instrument of yours that you play, which one is your sort of favourite? Which is your go-to?
Which is my favorite instrument? To be honest, I think all of the instruments that I play are my favorite. And I think the two instruments which I really, really love are the sitar and saxophone.
All right.
Yeah.
What do you like about the saxophone?
Well, I think what I really, really like about the saxophone, is the texture of the sound, and of course, when you try to learn the saxophone, it's a bit hard, with the mouth. You have to make that kind of embouchure to produce that sound. But yeah, I think what I really like about a saxophone is the sound and also the textureness of it. Yeah.
Nice. So, obviously, in the background, again, for the
hmm
people that are listening, there is a vast array of musical instruments behind him. Um, how do you get your hands on them?
are you asking like how
So, like,
I?
how do you like? Are you? How do you come across them to then obviously add them into your repertoire?
Oh, well, first of all, how I got these instruments, it's a lot of online researching, and there's an instrument which I have behind me in the background. Who are listening, some instruments that I have are from around the world, including India, China, Japan, Brazil, Africa, Hungary, uh, uh, Bulgaria. Then we have, it's like a vast amount of countries. And sometimes it becomes very hard to find an instrument, from a different country, And I think the hardest instrument to find is the bandura. And the bandura is a string instrument similar to a harp, and that instrument is from Ukraine. And as all of us know that the war is happening between Ukraine and Russia, so it's very hard to get that instrument at the time. And not to mention, I do have one instrument, which is very old, and it's called the American mandolin harp. And the American mandolin harp is a string instrument. It's very different, by the way, and how it works is that on our left hand we would use it to play the chords, and on the right hand we would use it to play the melody. So, which is very different. And I think the interesting fact about this instrument is that it was made in the 1930s. Can you believe that?
Wow.
1930s. And someone was selling it out on eBay, mentioning that someone saved it from 1930s. I was like, there's no way. And then when I got it home, I think the hardest part was the changing the strings, because the strings, they were attached to the bridge, but for some reason, if the string were to break, then I wouldn't be able to replace the string because how it was made, like it was so different. And I think there are around few of these in the world, and I have two of them. So yeah, very antique and a very antique sound.
Yeah, I bet. So, how do you find out about the instrument to then obviously go through the process of purchasing it on eBay or whatever? Like, how do you hear about the something from the Ukraine or stuff like that? Because a lot of them, from what I've seen in your videos and what you've done on TV shows and that, a lot of them are very sort of cultural. Like a lot of the stuff that you've played on the TV shows that I've watched, the links you sent me and stuff, I've
Mhm.
never even seen anything like that. Do you know what I mean? It feels like you would have to be in India and see someone
Yes.
on the street playing it and go, "Oh, what's that?" and then thingy. Whereas you're saying, obviously, you're doing it online. So how do you hear about these to even begin the process of purchasing them?
Well, how I heard about these instruments which I have, you know, um, of course it's online. I do a lot of research, as I mentioned. I would go on YouTube. I would put like world instruments, and then on YouTube it would show me videos, of the world instruments. And another way I would like go to Wikipedia. I would just type like antique instruments, world instruments from different parts of the countries, and it would um, give me all information. Like this is from India, this is from China, this is an instrument from different country. And also another thing is that mostly I would find out about the different instrument, by going outside. I would go to different performances. Like a Chinese performance or like an Indian performance. I would go there. I would see what the performers really play. I would I would and after and I would just like look at them. I'll see like what kind of instrument is that? Where is it from? And to be honest, even though I have all these instruments, there are around 4,000 instruments which are extinct, by the way. 4,000 if I'm correct. And yeah, so mostly it will be mostly online. I would do a lot of research. So that's how I found all these instruments. And also not to mention, also the instruments that I have, I also learned from teachers worldwide. I used to have around like 100 teachers who have taught me all of these instruments. 100, I know, is a big number. And not only that, I do I'm also self-taught. I learned the instrument by myself. I would also, you know, learn the instrument, from reading books, you know, or by learning from YouTube, which is a very great resource, for musicians or anybody who's wanting to learn. So yeah, I was use YouTube, for learning instruments or video tutorials. So yeah.
So with the with the instruments, what's the sort of price range of these instruments?
That is a good question. I don't think no one has ever asked me that question, and you're the first one to ask me this question. The price
Just
range.
because obviously I know guitars drastically
I know.
vary in price and I'm just thinking like the sitar, is it
Yeah.
the sitar
Sitar, yes.
and the theremin, like
Theremin.
you could tell me any number. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'd be like, it could be £500, it could be 2 grand, it could be
Yeah.
anything.
Okay. So I think let me start with expensive instruments. So the most expensive instrument that I have is the harp, right here,
Yeah.
behind me, and that instrument costed me around 10 grand, 10,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean, it is a beautiful again, for the listeners, you're
Beautiful.
missing out. Come over to YouTube and
Yeah.
have a look at it. It's beautiful.
Yes, and there are around two different types of harp. One is the lever harp, and another one is a pedal harp. And the pedal harp is more expensive than the lever harp. Um, Another instrument which I have is called the glass harp. So a glass harp um, is from Poland, and how it works is that it's all tuned wine glasses. So we don't use that instrument to hit with the sticks. We use it with our fingers. So kind of like imagine like you have like a wine glass and you're like putting your finger and like circling around the glass. So that's how it works. And the one I have, they're like all tuned wine glasses, and that one cost me around 6K, 6,000. Yeah. And I
Wow.
believe there are two instruments, I mean two glass harps which are in America, including where which I have it, and also someone has it in New York. So, and I've another instrument which is a new instrument which I got recently, and which I'll be using for in a reality show coming up in March, and it's called the taiko. And the taiko drum is a Japanese drum. It's like a big drum. And one thing which I really love about the Japanese drum is the sound. It's like so big. When I'm playing it, it's like when I'm playing the drums at the fast tempo, I could like hear my heart pounding like boom 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 boom. It's like a drum heartbeat, coming in
Mm.
hard. And yeah, and that instrument costed me around I don't know, like around 2K, to be honest.
Okay.
And by the way, it's very hard, to find taiko drums, and I'm glad that I'm lucky that I got this instrument. So yeah. So I mentioned the expensive instruments. Let's see. Any cheap instruments? I think the cheapest instrument that I have is the hmm. I, I think is the kazoo. By the way, I think
Right.
that's the
Yeah. Yeah.
cheapest
Yeah.
instrument I have, kazoo. You mean like you know that
Yeah.
sound, yeah. So that's the cheapest one I have. So yeah, so that's mostly it. So yeah.
When with like say for example the sort of example that I gave about the guitars where they obviously drastically range in price, is that the
hmm
same for these instruments as well, like a theremin or or any of the things you've got? Is there sort of levels to it, or are you always getting buying the best version of whatever it is?
Well, to be honest, the instrument I have are very high quality, and there's an instrument that I have which are very low quality, and the reason is that because depending on where is it from, like for example, I have an instrument called I think that now I've called a Ravan Hata. Ravan Hata is a instrument from Rajasthan, which is in India, and that instrument I have is a little bit low quality because it's from Rajasthan, which is and that place is mostly poor,
Yeah,
where
poor region. Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. But most of the instruments that I have mostly are like high quality, so yeah.
How when you're coming up with the music that you make,
hmm
how do you? Because like as you probably know from our previous discussion, I'm not that musically
hmm
tuned. But so when you're coming up with your beat, how do you integrate them? And do you integrate? I'm assuming you integrate a lot of instruments from different regions of the world and different parts of the world. Like, how do you sort of get that? Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like so they blend well, because obviously they're from different cultures and their sounds are different.
So
And
to to be specific, you're asking like how do I create a song with these instruments from around the world? Is what you're asking, or?
no, so when you create a song,
hmm
how does that sort of learning or understanding of your instruments then say, right, so when you start writing your song, you say use
hmm
a guitar, and then
hmm
it's, I think that, and I keep going back to it because I've got it wrote down, the theremin, and
hmm
then you're like, oh, the theremin will work here, and then
hmm
is that how you piece it together, or?
Yeah, so whenever I create a song, with instruments in different keys, first I would, you know, um, start uh, by writing down the instruments with different keys because the instrument that I have are in different keys, and some of the keys don't match with the other instruments. So I write down, one is in D key, this is in B flat, this is in A, and then after that I would try to record with a DAW. If you don't know what a DAW is, a DAW is like a digital audio software, which is for musicians who can record their music, like Ableton Live, FL Studio, Logic Pro, and many more. So yeah, I would use it like a DAW to record my music, and I would start by adding a drum beat, and then on top of that, I would add like a guitar, so that when I add a rolled instrument on top of that, let's say I add a sitar with a guitar, I can play with it, and I can try to find out if that matches, or if I should change the key, or if I should maybe should change the tempo, which could be better, or something like that. So, and with the same formula, I would interpret it with different instruments. And sometimes there'll be a few songs which I try to create, sometimes which will be all Arabic instruments, all Indian instruments, and there'll be some time where I'll like try to fusion, with, let's say, with American music with Indian music, or Indian music with Chinese music, So that's mostly how I, create a song with my rolled instruments. So yeah.
So when you've obviously with your being on the TV, as I mentioned earlier,
hmm
when was your first appearance on TV, and how did that even come about? Like, what was the phone call, or the how did it feel for you?
What was my first appearance on TV? Huh. That's a good question.
And how old were
I
you?
I, I remember now. I remember now. Okay. I think my first appearance on TV was Fox 40, and at the time I was 12 years old. And
Wow.
I think how I got that I think how I got that appearance. Um, I was at home. With my family. I think I was doing something with. I was trying to practice my sitar or my other instruments, and I recently caught a call from an unknown number, and I picked up call, and they said, "Hello, this is the team from Fox 40, and we want to interview you about your talent." I'm like, "Is this fake or real?" I had no idea that was. I thought it was fake or some. I was like, "Okay." I was like, and then I asked them, "How did you?" How did you hear about me? They said, we have read one of uh, your newspapers by which you came recently. I'm like, oh, really? I said, okay, sure. So come in. So then, and the funny part was that they wanted to interview my parents, and at that time, my mom was at work, and my dad was at home, and he didn't know how to answer the questions, and my mom knew very well how to answer the questions. So my dad said, "Okay, I will do the interview." So the Fox 40 the team came to my house. They got the cameras, equipment, very big cameras, and they filmed me, and it was a great experience. I got to experience how to handle in front of the camera. How to interview uh and also from that, from doing many interviews on and on and on, I felt like my confidence gained up. So yeah, that was my first time, being on live TV. So
Did you
yeah, it
play?
was awesome.
Did you play any instruments in that?
Yes, I did. I played around on my first appearance on live TV. Um, I think it was 5 or 7 instruments I did
Okay.
on live TV. Yeah.
And what were they? Do you remember?
It was the sitar, bubulturang, which is a string instrument from India. Veena, didgeridoo from Australia. Uh, Drums, and yeah, I think that was probably it. I know I played more, but I don't remember in my head in the back of my head. But I think those are instruments which I played on my first appearance.
You mentioned there the Vina.
Veena.
Where's that from? What sort of an
So
instrument?
the Veena is a string instrument from India. Actually, it is from uh, South India, and that instrument, it's that instrument has a very unique sound, by the way. And that instrument has around four melody strings and three sympathetic strings, and the sound is a bit similar to the sitar, except it is a bit more. It's a bit more like how can I say like that? The sound is like more like a tingling. It's like it's like a very unique sound like you have never heard before. Like as I mentioned, Indian music very different. It's very uh interesting um texture in its sound, and that instrument is used in used in traditional music. And also forgot to mention in our Indian music, we have this term which is called rags, and a rag is similar to like a song, but it's like a song, but it's very different. We have like the intro. In our system, we will call it a lap, and after the intro, we will have like like we have like the verse, chorus, right? So in our for our chorus, we would call it the we would call it satai, which is the chorus. And then after that we have antra, and and Antara um, is like the first verse or the second verse. So now you see the difference is that we start with the chorus, then go to the verse. While in American songs we start with the verse and the chorus. So that's the only difference I would say. So yeah, very interesting.
And then from there, what was it like for yourself? Like once once the show had aired, and obviously you starred on TV. What within your life sort of changed from that?
After coming on many live TV shows, interviews, everything, I gained a lot of confidence. I gained a lot of popularity. Now people come to know about me and say, "Oh, this is the guy who can play around 107 instruments. Oh, this is the guy who can play multi-instrument." I'm like, "Wow, that's interesting." I always get that thing all every time. So yeah, I gained a lot of popularity, confidence, and also from coming on many live interviews, I have also seen improvement. Performing on live. The first time I performed on live, I was, a bit not a confident, but after doing many times interview after interview, then I became more confident in performing live. So yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that 100%. Like it's exactly the same for me with the podcast. And when I first started, I started very sort of local. I did. It was mainly family and friends, to be quite honest.
Oh.
But a lot of them, well, obviously the ones I interviewed, they've led sort of very extraordinary lives. So that was quite nice, and I think it was. Again, I was probably quite privileged to have the people around me that I do.
Hmm.
To start me off. But the difference between me now and then is definitely sort of it's astronomically different. I mean, it's like as you're talking, I'm sort of then building my next question off of what you're saying or how you're saying it and all the rest
Hmm.
of it. Whereas when I first started, it would be sort of to my notes, and then I'd be like, oh, so let me just and it would be sort of very staggered. But yeah, but it's the same with anything. With practice, you
Hmm.
you do get better
Yes.
and go down the road. So another thing again popped into my head while you were talking about this. Obviously, some of these instruments are quite large.
That's
Where do
correct.
you store them all?
I store them in my house. I have two rooms. One of the rooms, have the big instruments, and the other room has all the small instruments. So yeah.
How
So
do you stow them away? Like, are they just in there ready to play, or are they in their, in their cases, or?
actually I put most of the instruments in the cases. Some instruments don't have cases, so I would put them by the wall. So yeah.
Wow,
And plus, I
that's
do have a rack, where I put like the bottom instrument percussion. The next rack would be the string instruments, and then the other rack would be the woven instruments, something like that. So yeah.
yeah, that's just yeah. When you said about obviously your popularity and
Hmm.
stuff, was that in school? Was that from?
Yeah. So from the popularity, after my first appearance on the Fox 40, yeah, now I've yes, one of my friends at school came to know about me and said, "Oh, I didn't know you played all these instruments," and also getting popularity on social media, like on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and yeah, and now I think now more people are coming to know about me, by the way. So I'm doing my best, you know, to to reach the world, to make and also to make the world, know about me, everything and playing all the world instruments and of course also performing on different performance for different events like for Chinese, sometimes I would like perform for Chinese New Year or for Indian Independence Day or for um like a Vietnam performance or like I do numerous of events which are like in different cultures and from that I do gain popularity from there. So yeah, but I mean, it has been so great after all, so yeah, I'm so lucky that I have this talent and everything. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. With your, as I mentioned about your schooling, um, how many hours of practice do you do each day, and throughout the years have you done to stay, fluent in with all the different instruments?
well, I practice 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day. And let me explain how I am managing my time with my studies and my music. So, the school I go to is called California Connections Academy, and it's an online school. Um, so in this case, the one thing which I like about the school is that I can study at any time of the day. So in this case, for example, if I had a performance in the morning and I could not finish my homework, I can finish that in the nighttime and just sum it in. That's it. Um, and you know, because if I hadn't taken online schooling, if I were in public school, I wouldn't have enough time because in public school you have to stay there. Over there you cannot bunk, in classes. So, but in online schooling, I can you know, find some time for my music, find some time for my studies, and at the same time able to manage at the same time. So
Yeah, because you're basically doing the world the other way around. You're
yeah, that's
you're
correct.
managing school around your music, whereas obviously for most kids and adults as well, obviously with
Yeah.
work, you work and then you
hmm
have to sort of fit in your hobby and or
hmm
whatever you're into outside of it. But you've
hmm
sort of flipped that on its head.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's well, that's wicked. That's all we've got time for this week, folks. Tune in next week for the second half of Neil Nayyar. Do you want to give everyone your Instagram, YouTube tags, all the rest of it like that?
Sure, you can check out my website at www.neilnair.com, Instagram page at Neil Musician, NeilMusican. Same thing for TikTok, Facebook. You put Neil Nayyar, and a YouTube page at Neil Musician. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Thank you.
No, brilliant. Well, tune in next week, everybody. Thank you very much. Goodbye.